Welcome into the Dad Verb Podcast, where we chat about parenting from the lens of a dad. My name is Andrew, and I am joined by my friends Ben Brown and Andrew Saunders. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Doing all right?
Great.
Ben came off a nice date night last night. We are enjoying our Labor Day weekend, laboring on Labor Day, making you guys a fresh podcast here, but we're happy to do it. We're really excited. On this episode, we are going to try to keep it a little bit brief because I've got a fantasy draft that I need to catch up to. So we're going to zoom through our topics here. I apologize, guys, but you know what? I'm gonna sign on to ESPN soon and see where I'm drafting, so I can do my draft strategy as we're recording here. But in this week's episode, we are quickly going to be catching up with you guys and chatting about co-sleeping. Don't. What are your thoughts on that? That can be kind of dicey. I know. We're going to open up on that, our approaches to sleep a little bit, and then things that we said that we'd never do before we had kids. We're all hypocrites here. We're going to open up on that a little bit. We got Discord comments always coming in. We got one picked out here that we're going to elaborate on, specifically about like nutrition, food, pregnancy, that time of life. So we'll chat about that. And
that dad anxiety.
Oh, always, dude. My wife. We'll get into it. I'm excited to open up that can of worms. That was fun. And then we'll close out the show with a 5-star review read that we got coming in. So, guys, to kick it off, I am finally healthy. It's been like 5 weeks of sickness and coughing, and I'm so sorry about that. But I'm healthy. We got to play this game. How are you guys doing? Health check.
Our family is pretty good. We're coming off the back of some respiratory stuff that we all kind of shared.
Yep.
We have a little one that's teething. So she's just, real snotty and boogery and kind of fussy. But
yeah,
other than that, everybody seems to be pretty good. So fingers crossed that next week will be the same.
Andrew, how you doing?
We're healthy. Knock on wood, that immune system's functioning. So
there you go. No. Andrew, by the way, is megapixelated today as he is calling in from Iowa. Not his.
I'm on remote at the grandparents' house.
There you go. So he's calling in from Iowa. So if you're watching on the YouTubes, he looks like a Nintendo 64 pixelated character from Ocarina of Time. There we go.
Don't worry, next week we'll be back to the home setup. Good camera, nice lighting. I actually have the same camera. I don't know why it's pixelated, other than my upload's probably garbage in the middle of a
who
farm
knows?
in
Maybe
Iowa.
the actual upload is going to be way more crisp. I'm not sure. Anyway,
all I know is Ben looks great. That's
Ben always
the
looks
mustache
good,
looks
dude.
good.
I might not ever give good advice, but as long as I look good on the other side of this, perfect face for podcasting.
Yeah, Ben is always looking sharp, man. Ben's working it. All right, guys. So let's dive into our first topic here. Co-sleeping. This is a topic that gets very dicey because co-sleeping, if you were to go by the recommendations of the American Academy of Pediatrics, it's recommended that you don't co-sleep, right? Because of rollover risk, it suffocates the baby.
Yeah.
The recommendation, according to Western experts, right? It's to room share, not bed share, right? You can room share for the first few months, and then they transition out of your room into crib, into the nursery, right? But it's recommended that you don't share a bed. That's the recommendation. That's kind of like optimal 101. That's how you do it. Then there's the actual reality of what it's like day to day when your baby it's like impossible to be comforted, and the only place that they'll sleep is on your chest, right? They sleep with mom and dad in bed, right? So there's the reality of it. So I think what I wanted to do is talk about our experiences, what we did, how we went about it. I've talked about this in our course. The Father Figured course is a full module on this. But again, that's based off of what recommendations are. But for you guys, what was your experience with co-sleeping, not co-sleeping, favor to one or the other, opposition to one? Ben, let's kick it off to you. Like, what was your approach to this?
Yeah, so this is we get in later to things that we said we'd never do before we had kids.
What? I didn't pair these up well at all. I'm not...
I know. Yeah. This was one of mine. I was adamant before we had kids that our bed, my wife and I's bed, is our space, right? Like, it's not to be shared with the kids. It's just there are limitations to what we accept. I think the in-room sleeping in a travel crib or a bassinet, perfectly fine. Did not want to have the kids sleeping in the bed. That very quickly changed. So once you get that experience of having your newborn at home, you're awake every couple of hours, it's nearly impossible to not end up co-sleeping, at least at some point, right? Especially if your kid is breastfeeding for those first couple of months. Like, if mom is sitting up in bed, 9 times out of 10 she's gonna fall asleep because you're exhausted, right? Like, you're just gonna fall asleep with your kids in the bed. It's gonna happen. When they got to a point where either they wouldn't calm down or they were teething, and the only way to calm them down was to let them sleep on your chest. If the choice is none of us get any sleep at all tonight, or we manage to sleep for a couple of hours in a not ideal situation, then that was the choice. And then, when it comes down to your kids being sick, they want to be around you. And I would say it's less of a challenge now that our oldest has his own, he's got his big boy bed. So he's got like a twin size mattress. So if he wants to co-sleep, we can actually do that in his room. But previously, if he had a nightmare, if he was really sick, if he just couldn't calm down and wouldn't sleep, that's where he ended up. And we just kind of had to learn to be okay with it and do it as safely as we possibly could.
Yeah. Andrew, what about you, man?
I think the easy answer is show of hands who's fallen asleep with their kid on their chest, on their lap, in the armchair, right? So the answer here is
good, though, man.
We've all done it. So we have managed to avoid official co-sleeping. We don't, at night, kid has never slept overnight in our bed. But I cannot count the number of times I have fallen asleep with one or more children in my arms, in my armchair, watching TV, reclined, where they're out, I'm out, and we're just like, okay, this works, right? And what wakes us up is my wife going, okay, we're going to bed now. All three of you off to sleeping time, right? So, in all reality, it happens. It's gonna happen. We don't intentionally do it, but there are mornings where the girls wake up at 7 a.m. and we're not. We work late hours, so like my wife doesn't start until noon. She works till 9 p.m. So like getting up at 9 a.m. is a normal for us. So if the kid wakes up at 7, there are times when she gets her butt changed and she gets stuffed between mom and dad, and she sleeps for another hour right between us, and that's just how it is, right? Frankly, I'm not worried about rolling over on my kid because I really don't roll in my sleep, but that's just me. Like, I'm like a zombie. Anyway,
I think for the most part, my experiences are largely in sync with yours. I would say 90% of the time, 95% of the time, we were really strict about no, there's gonna be no co-sleeping, and for the most part we did stick to that. But there were occasions where, like Ben said, like they're sick or whatever, you just can't, there's no other way to comfort them, or they would just kind of be with us, which I'm sure these statements alone are enough to get us canceled by the entire parenting niche industry world. Like, you can't
it's been nice,
like,
guys.
We're done.
Hope you enjoyed the podcast.
Right. So and it's funny because I think it was Kristen Bell. She was, celebrity mom, where she came out, and it was like kind of like this moment where she was just like, I gotta admit something. I get something off my chest. And I co-sleep with my kids, and there's a bunch of people that was like, it was like a mix. There's a bunch of people like, that's terrible. You're a terrible mom. You're gonna kill your kid. And there's a bunch of people who are like, it's because it's normal, and it's because it's human behavior to want to be close to your parent, and to have that comfort and that warmth. That's just what babies do. So
before the echo, this was literally the heartbeat lullaby, right? You just put your kid on your chest, and your heartbeat put him to sleep.
Literally.
There wasn't the ability to sound machine heartbeat. So I feel like
I think for
co-sleeping has been
millennia
around longer than the anti-co-sleeping movement.
I think co-sleeping has been thousands and thousands and thousands of years onto been a thing. I think it's only recently that there's Western medicine that would say we got to mitigate risk, and I think there's validity to that. But I don't think that I think whichever way you go, you do. I don't really care.
Well, I mean, in a lot of other cultures too, there is like co-sleeping is a normal thing, right? Like,
yes, 100%.
In order to not co-sleep, you have to have the means to have enough space in your home to not sleep with your children in your bed.
Yep.
Right. The majority of the world doesn't have that.
Yeah.
Right. So, any third world country you go to, any even just less developed nations or emerging nations, you're going to find people regularly co-sleeping, and it's not a strange thing.
Yeah.
Well, again, I mean, if you look at it from a Western idealist point of view, like
we get canceled.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense for us because no, that's bad. But so many other cultures do it regularly, and it ends up fine.
Well,
exactly
normal.
I think it really came out of it seems to me like there was a wave of accidental suffocations that occurred.
Yes.
Because children were left in environments where there were too many plushy pillows. There was a 4-inch thick down comforter, right?
Right.
When our child is in our bed, it's a linen sheet, right? It's one bed sheet. There is no comforter on top of her, right? She's not sleeping with the 6 down pillows that we have on, right?
Right.
It's her on a mattress adjacent to me, and there isn't a bunch of covers, a bunch of stuffed animals, a bunch of and I think that's
body
the big
pillow
difference. Is as Ben put it, the wealth of the Western world has created an environment where we think we need accoutrement on our bed. And there's one of those $5 words for you. And the reality is you need like a sheet on your straw mattress, right? And you can actually get through the night. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, that's I think that kind of covers our general experiences with co-sleeping. I kind of want to, in preparation for my fantasy draft, I'm just going to go ahead and move things forward. But we need to take a moment to thank our sponsors, which is nobody. So if you do want to sponsor this YouTube, this channel, this podcast, you hook us up, let us know. So sponsors.
I have been pitching Arctic. I've been pitching Arctic hard. After our last conversation, where we lauded them over Yeti, I have been just slowly pinging them, going like, "Hey, Arctic, do you want to sponsor a podcast by Dad?"
I mean, do you keep sending melon hats links? You should, every time you guys say melon hats, I'm like, somebody should just be launching that one over their way.
Yeah.
Oh man. All right. Well, no sponsors, but one day you guys support the podcast. Well, guys, what are some things that you said that you would never do as a parent, and now it's complete BS? All right, I got one fresh in my head because it kind of happened today, and there's a little bit of guilt with this too. For me, it was growing up. I'm a board game guy. I love games, and with my kids, I love the childish aspect of it. I like being able to play video games with them, and Uno and Monopoly and just the games. Like it's just something that I thrived off of, that I loved as a kid. It really gave me so much joy and memories. And I was like, dude, I'm going to recreate every single one of those and just constantly play all these games and constantly engage with my kids in that way. Like I want to recreate all those fun memories, because I love games. Like to this day, I love card games. Like that's just who I am, right? And I just don't have the damn energy, man. I just can't do it. So I find myself like wanting to just be like, yo, Henry, I'd love to play everything with you. I just can't. Dad just needs to sit and relax. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm a very playful dad. Coach a soccer team. I'm always throwing the football. I'm doing the things, right? But there's some times where I'm just like this ideology, just the idea that I would have just an endless amount of like energy to be able to play at the level that I thought that I would. That's just not there, man. And I feel guilty about it too. I'm like, I just can't, man. You figure out something. I got your magnet tiles and Legos over there.
Go assemble some magnet tiles. Leave me alone.
Yeah, literally. And I've said this before in previous podcasts. Colin is very good at that. Henry, you just can't do it. You just can't do it. So he's just not good at it. But I just thought that I would have the energy to be able to recreate the experiences that I had as a kid for my kids. And I just don't. And I'm just like, man, and it's hard. It's really hard.
But I will say, I think the reality of what you remember as an adult from your childhood is probably far different than what you actually experienced.
Probably.
I think, you might remember somebody with boundless energy or always playing board games or all these other things, but those are the memories that you've attached.
Yeah.
And that likely he will attach to.
I hope so. I hope I'm doing enough to get that.
Yeah.
I really hope I am.
It goes back to that idea of like, am I enough? Am I doing enough? Right? Like you feel guilty for needing a moment for yourself to relax.
Yeah.
And I think it's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, same thing is like, I'm never just going to like sit him down in front of, that's one of the things I said. I never just want to like stick him in front of the TV or like stick him in front of an iPad and do that.
There's so much of that today.
But like,
there was so much of that today.
There are times and days where either you need to get a bunch of stuff done around the house.
Yep.
And they don't necessarily want to be involved.
Yeah.
Or involve them as much as you can. And sometimes you just need that break, right? To just mentally kind of check out for a couple minutes, go, all right, you're going to be entertained for a little while, eat your lunch, have a break.
Yep.
Everybody relaxes, and then you go back to your, whatever your daily routine is.
Bro,
that was one of our like so never will eyes. And I mean, we do it regularly because sometimes it's the only way to get things done.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, there's so much Bluey today. There's so much Miss Rachel for Sienna. There was so much. There was a bunch of Switch games. It's just Minecraft. I'm just like, dude, it just had to be. So no, and you feel guilty about it, but just you need it sometimes. You need it. It was just one of those days. It's Labor Day. It's a holiday, bro. Give me a break. I'm not trying to work. Anyway, that was me. What about you guys?
Hey, go ahead, Andrew.
So mine's okay. So mine goes along with the quote, Joey doesn't share food. You ever remember that episode of Friends where Joey loses it over a plate of fries? So Andrew doesn't share food. I am bad at people eating off my plate. I basically don't eat off other people's plates, like at all. I can like register the childhood trauma memory that triggered this in my life. Like it's crystal clear. I know why this is a thing for me. And so I went into this going, no, I will never finish my kids' food. And the other day I found myself finishing a cheese stick that she had bitten off of, and I was like, I did it.
There it is.
Like there are limits, right? Like, but it was one of those, she wanted a cheese stick, she took a bite, and then she's like, nope, I'm done. And it was like, I'm not just going to throw this away. Like,
I can't bring
so
myself
I finished
to do
a mozzarella cheese stick, and it was very hard for me to psychologically stomach. But it was also one of those, like, it's just a cheese stick. And
dude, like half a warm banana.
There will be limits, because, like, my wife and I don't even share drinks. Like, it's a weird cycle. I will kiss her. She's my wife, right? But the idea of sharing a bottle of water with her, maybe on a hot day in the desert, not a problem. But if she has access to fresh water, this is mine. That is yours.
Oh, that's so funny, dude. We share so much of that.
I can't say that I don't understand, because when my wife and I first started dating, we were 19. And there were several times where we'd be out or we'd be, sharing a drink or something, and she would hand me the drink and I would actually wipe it off and then take a drink out of it. And she's like, like, we kiss each other, right?
Right.
So you wiping this off is literally like, it doesn't make any sense.
Right. There's no logic to it.
I was like, I'm fully aware that this doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
I'm still going to do it. Now, I've gotten to a point now where it doesn't matter, but it probably took me 4 or 5 years of like consistently sharing drinks with her to get to a point where I didn't have to wipe it off before I took a sip.
Dude, it's funny. My wife, she can't finish like a bottle of water. Like, well, for the most part, we use like, she has like a Stanley water bottle or whatever. But for a time before that was like a thing, there was like plastic water bottles, and she would never finish the very like last quarter of the bottle. And they'd be sitting around the house, they'd be in the car. And I'm like, I'm just gonna. Sometimes what I'll do is like combine them all to make one full bottle. I'm like, look, how much water you've wasted, wife. And then she gets
So
mad.
you're just running around with the backwash bottle like, this is delicious.
So, and that's what happened once. I remember drinking one of her like unfinished things. Like, gosh, just finish the damn thing, and it tasted minty. I didn't realize that she had like spit out like leftover gum in there, or like a Tic Tac. I was like, why is it disgusting? And she's like, oh my gosh, and why'd you drink that? I was like, I thought it was clean. I didn't know. I just took a swig of it. She was like, that's been sitting in the car for 4 days. And I was like, I know it was warm, but like, and then, oh yeah. So I don't know. It's weird. By the way, on that, I'm like a human garbage can when it comes to like my kids' food. There's just so much. But in part, it's because I have terrible impulse control when it comes to food. But also, there's like this monetary aspect. I'm like, I just can't stomach the idea that we're throwing away like $50 worth of food.
You see
it's just
the money going.
That's what I see. I see money going to the trash, and I have to like finish the food. I can't not do it for that reason as well. I know it's weird, but that's just how
it gives me the heebie-jeebies just you talking about it. Like,
you can't you can't eat off. Dude, just leftover nuggets, leftover freaking cheese sticks and goldfish. I'm like, I'll finish it.
Nope. Basically, if there is a bite taken out of it, I can't do it. Like, I will even take
if the kids aren't sick, I'm eating it.
I will take a knife and cut off like the eaten part of the pizza and eat the rest. That's about as close as I get to sharing food.
Oh, I don't
with other human beings.
Dude, I used to this disgusting thing. I used to flip burgers in college, right? And in the back there was like, there would be like just food that would like come in that would like wasn't finished or whatever, and it's just like stuff that was untouched.
You're stealing stuff from the trays in the hallway, aren't you?
Oh yes, absolutely.
There's a dinner roll in the hallway of the hotel. That one's 100%.
Mine. As a 35-year adult man, like now, no, I wouldn't do that. But like a starving college kid, we're just idiots, you know? Yeah, we were eating so much free tater tots that just like we're barely touched, and we were starving college kids.
Didn't matter.
Yeah, it was we
didn't have any money. If I didn't want to just eat ramen that night, it was taking food from somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, it was fair game. It was going in the trash. Otherwise, I was like, I'll do it.
I couldn't do it. Nope.
Anyway,
moving on. That's one of the things I said I would never do before I had kids. And I have done it. It still makes me go, ugh.
I'm curious to see if that stance of yours softens as your kids get older. I'm curious.
I think it will it will just be reaffirmed, because I think the reason I can tolerate it now is they're not intentionally making a mess, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not doing stuff, but like as they get older, it will be like
that changes.
Yeah, you messed up that chicken nugget. I'm not even getting close to it. Like it's covered in barbecue
mangled
sauce, and you've eaten 3 bites out of 4 sides. Like I am not touching that, right? Whereas,
and they like to take their fingers and just press into it. You know, just like a couple little finger presses right into the nugget.
As they start playing with their food more, it'll just get reinforced, and it'll be nope. I can't recognize that nugget. Ben? I'm not putting it in my mouth.
Yeah.
What was your moment, man?
Our big one, like I said before, was co-sleeping. I just said I would never do it. That was like I'm pretty forgiving about most things. I'm pretty understanding. I'm like, most things I'm kind of like, oh, I can see a gray area. But like co-sleeping was like my line in the sand. That was my hill I was going to die on. I was not going to have my kids in my bed. The first time he got sick and then wouldn't sleep, I was like, yep. You're sleeping with me, dude. I let go of all my principles. I made sure, my arms were all propped up in pillows so he couldn't move and I couldn't move, and everybody was just like hemmed in.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, dude, we're good.
It's so funny. The pain, like they're baby sleeping on you and you're uncomfortable and you're in pain. Your back's hurting.
You're in weird positions.
And you got to move. Don't move.
They're little heaters.
Yeah.
Yep. Right? You got 98 degrees right here just cooking you in the middle of summer, and you're like,
but you don't move. God forbid you wake up the baby. You don't move. The amount of like just discomfort that you begin to tolerate as a parent.
Actually,
I'll peel them off, you don't know who is sweating more. Right?
And I'll actually tell you a story about how quickly I gave up on these principles. It was actually even before he got sick. It was actually in the hospital. I got in trouble for this because we were in the hospital right after he was born. And I mean, the nurses check on you all hours of the night. There's always people in and out of your room. You're not sleeping. There's noise. It's cold. And so I would change him. He would get fed. And like, I would let my wife go back to sleep and I would just sit there with him. And, I haven't slept in like 3 or 4 days. And I was like, oh, I'll just sit back for a minute, right? Just for a minute. I woke up 2 hours later with a nurse like nudging me, going, sir, we can't let you do this. I'm so, like, I understand, but we can't let you do this. I'm going to take the baby and put him back. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah. I mean, it was, I was trying to make it like, it was a couple months after we came home that we let him co-sleep. No, it was immediate.
It was
absolutely immediate, right off the bat.
Oh man,
I'd forgotten about that until like right now during this conversation. Yeah, he instantly fell asleep on my chest.
And that principle out the window. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whatever you need to do to survive, especially with that first one, is what you're gonna do. But yeah, that was our big one, was co-sleeping.
That's the experience is like when you're in the hospital and then like the way that like the nurses police you. I just remember feeling so annoyed. Like, dude, especially when it's like second or third time around, like I know what I'm doing. Could just like, and it's like how many feeds and like I'm tracking and I don't know.
I had someone try to tell me how to put my kid in a car seat when we had our second one. They're like, no, you need to do this, and I just very gently moved a hand away and said, "This is my second one. I've done this before." And they were like, "Oh, okay." And I was like, "I know you're trying to help, but like, just get out of my way. I know what I'm doing."
I remember
we had
baby
to be
3
escorted to our car.
Oh no, I was gonna say I remember with baby number 3
that much that we're interrupting.
I guess, are we lagging a bunch? Yeah. Well, so with our third, with the first 2, like you're really excited as a new dad. Like I'm gonna change the diaper, and I remember with the third one, Sienna. She had pooped. It was like the second poop. It was like still that kind of meconium phase of the
tar.
Black tar poop. Yeah. And the nurse, she's like, "Do you want to change it?" And I was like, "No, I'm gonna let you do that one." And I remember it was just because like I had changed so like hundreds of poops up to this point. The hospital bill is like $7,000, and I'm like, no, I'm paying you to do this for now. I'm gonna be doing this a lot. Yeah, I'm gonna let you have this one. All right, I'm good.
I'm gonna take a break.
Like, oh gosh. All right, so
that's funny.
We got about 10 minutes here before I have to draft. So let's rewind it real quick to prior to the baby, right? Let's discuss something that came in through Discord. We had a comment come in about food. So let me just go ahead and read this and then we'll open up the discussion here. Hi guys, first post for me here. I've been reading the feeds frequently since about a month, and I have to say this community is amazing, so thank you for joining. That's awesome. Started listening to the podcast. Also really appreciate the level of honesty from Andrew and Ben. Episode 3 was really touching. My wife is 12 weeks pregnant at the moment, so congrats. Past that first trimester, 12 weeks is awesome. I'm sure you're announcing now. My question is a bit vague, but it's mainly about how to deal with what foods to avoid during pregnancy, and also what everyday hygiene, cleaning, and cosmetic products are safe. All right. So this is something that my wife and I, or my wife in particular, like really struggled with. So we'll talk about that in a sec. I know there are lists everywhere about this subject, but there are sometimes as much different interpretations about certain ingredients and products. This definitely fuels my wife's and my anxiety levels, which have already been quite high before the pregnancy, as we had an IVF, right? So I'm sure that journey was quite a bit of a toll for you. It sounds like a pretty simple thing to do. You read the lists, articles, apps, etc., and you follow the recommendations. But in real life, you think you buy the right products only to realize a month after daily usage that it contains a small dose of something that's not recommended. Anyway, if someone has tips on how to handle this with less anxiety, I am all ears. Okay. So my wife, it was less about like the topical cleaning hygiene stuff. It was more about the food. My gosh, my wife avoided pizzas, like a pepperoni pizza. because it's like, is uncured, cured meat, really scared about that. I'm like, babe, it's cooked.
Oh, it had
You're
like
fine.
nitrates and
She couldn't do all that. Obviously, there's the basics, right? Raw fish, sushi, don't do that. The alcohol, don't do smoking, don't do that.
Deli
I think
meats.
there's like some have like an exception for kombucha, but not really. That's not. I know. But my wife, when it comes to the food, she would for 40 weeks hyper anxiety about what is and isn't good. In the course, there's a full module dedicated to this. We actually talked to like a nutritionist. She's like an actual like a pregnancy like nutrition expert. Like that's her thing. That's what she does. And I interviewed her and we like talk about like what's good, what's not. We've got like a list there. So if you are in the course, that's there. I don't know. Is there a PDF in the course for me to download so I can like find that? I don't know. While I look for that, guys, do you guys want to shed your thoughts on this topic?
So yeah. I replied to this on the Discord and I looked at my wife and I was like, what did you avoid when you like, I just sat across from her. I said, what was it? Alcohol, caffeine, tuna and seafood because of the mercury content. She likes tuna melts, so canned tuna. Cured meats. And there was one more. There were 5. I guess I could pop open Discord because I'll have it real quick. And that was it. That's all we did. We didn't change laundry detergents. We didn't worry about cosmetics. I was like, any of your like cosmetic? And she actually laughed. She was like, no, I didn't do any of that. And right? I've got 2 healthy girls, no issues. I'm trying to see what the other one was.
And honestly, if you think about just like the history of just like us as humans with like products over like the last 100 years, there were things that were made with far worse ingredients and they were just oblivious to it. There were some people were smoking while they were pregnant.
People was like literally painted lead into their homes,
dude,
for decades.
The amount of insane stuff that you would have, if you were to like rewind time and go back to that point, like us being as knowledgeable or whatever, as woke as we are now, to go back 50, 60, 70 years to a time, it would be just like, what was happening? Granted, I think like food production was a little bit different, probably a little bit cleaner. But I think there are equally some just as egregious things on the other side that were like, what were we thinking? Turned out fine.
I mean, to be fair, right? You did have a higher mortality rate for kids under 5, right? I mean, if you roll it back,
what are the stats on
13? Well, they'd have 12, 13, 14 families,
13
and 4
kids
would survive.
Half of them wouldn't survive.
Right. I mean, getting them to 5 years old was a major
because
milestone.
They were co-sleeping. I'm kidding.
Right, that's what it was. It was the co-sleeping.
That must have been it.
It had nothing to do with the lack of antibiotics and,
heavy industry accidents or farming accidents, any of those.
Or losing your kid in the woods to wolves. I mean, that wasn't a thing.
But I think it's really interesting too, because I think I was reading this when my wife was pregnant, because they told you, you can't eat raw fish and you can't eat sushi. That recommendation isn't followed in a culture like Japan. Right. So in Japan, you can eat, it's actually recommended that you can eat things like that, right? There's no limitation on raw fish. And so I think there's a really interesting like cultural split too, where the recommendations are going to differ by country. And one thing I think we need to be really clear about.
Than we are. I'm just
all right. I think one thing we really want to be clear about too is that there's a very big difference between something like just not being recommended, like, hey, maybe just try to avoid this, and something actually being known to be detrimental to a pregnancy or a pregnant mother, right? So there's a difference between, and a nuance between, avoid it if you can, but if you can't, not a big deal, and absolutely do not do this thing. Like right now, even when it comes to alcohol, like there is still, again, the recommendation is no alcohol, but when you really talk to an OB or you talk to a pediatrician and they're like, if you have a small glass of wine later in your pregnancy, you're probably not really going to do any damage. Now, should you do that all the time? No. But, again, it is recommended that you avoid it and that you not drink heavily through a pregnancy, because yes, that can do damage, but the evidence is starting to show that, like, all right, a couple glasses of wine through your pregnancy in the later stages is not going to harm your kid. But again, the larger recommendation, because they have to recommend it for
if you can avoid
the biggest population possible. Yeah, just if you can avoid it, just don't.
They do the same thing with caffeine, right? It's don't consume so much, and it's not because it's going to do any damage. It's because it increases heart rates in you and your child so much that there is a potential for other problems, blood vessels bursting, things like that. And so it's not that caffeine is going to cause damage, it's that too much caffeine causes the heart rate to rise, which then causes the damage. You can do the same thing by exercising too heavily, right? And so again, it's what's the proper, there's a phrase for this. Everything in moderation, even moderation.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to point
100%.
everyone to a really good resource. It's funny because her latest post, her most recent post is coffee bad for pregnancy? And then she dives into coffee, tea, just caffeine in general. Her name is Ryan Kipping, Ryann Kipping, and on Instagram you can find her as the prenatal nutritionist. She is the one that we had like an hour-long interview or half-hour interview or whatever on the course, and she had a wealth of knowledge. But she had, if you want to just find like good trusted recommendations from an actual professional in this field, she's a great one. So I would recommend you check her out. Again, her name is Ryan Kipping at the prenatal nutritionist. So that's like, going back to the question, that's a good resource for just like, more lists, right? But when it comes to the anxiety aspect, it's probably the bigger part. It's really hard in the moment to just be like, dude, everything's going to be fine, because like hindsight's 2020, right? But like for the reasons that we talked about earlier, like it's going to be fine, little things here and there will not be detrimental. And I know that those feelings are even more compounded because of your IVF journey. Like that's hard. That's hard. It took you a long time to get to this stage. So you want to be sure that you're nourishing and doing the best that you can, but just know that like, well, it's probably going to give you more stress, but like stress and anxiety is probably doing you more harm than whatever you're putting on your, on your skin at night to make sure,
it's, you don't know what you don't know. Right.
Yeah,
and I think it's the, again, to what Andrew was saying earlier, like if you go back to the, 100 years ago, we didn't know what we know today. Right. So the things we were doing then wouldn't make sense today. And we go, oh yeah, that's crazy. And I'm sure 100 years from now, we'll look back and say the things we do today probably don't make a lot of sense, because we will hopefully have advanced our knowledge. The challenge is that we live in such an information-based society that you can get anything to confirm anything that you might be thinking, or any type of like really early stage research that says, well, there might be a connection between this and this, but it's been released, it's unsubstantiated, it's not backed up by any secondary research or any additional research to confirm that finding. And so you can find that all over the internet. And I think that can definitely add to the anxiety that you're experiencing. And so honestly, the best thing to do is to talk to your either your pediatrician or your OB, listen to their advice, because generally they're going to give you the most sort of up-to-date and confirmed information. Beyond that, honestly, try to stay away from reading a bunch of stuff online, because you never know where it's coming from, what the source is, and the quality of the research that's gone into it. Because anyone will say anything to sell you anything. So if they can scare you into buying a different product because it's better for you, even though there's not any research behind it, they will do so. Yeah. So definitely just try to know your sources and where you're getting your information, and try to limit that, because that will only exacerbate your anxiety.
Well, guys, I hope. Oh, did you want to plug in one last thing?
I was just going to say, you have to remember that human beings have been doing this for a millennia or more. I mean, right? 3,000-4,000 years of written history of us giving birth to children and raising them successfully. Okay. Don't forget that this isn't as difficult as the world wants you to believe it is. I know it seems that way. I know we all talk about it being hard, but we've we've done it successfully for thousands of years, and you're not going to screw it up. You just have to get through the process.
There you go. I mean, it's really easy to have people fearmonger as a marketing tactic, make you think that you need things that you actually don't. But yeah, I think Andrew summed it up pretty well there. Guys, this is episode 20 of our podcast.
Wow.
I don't know if I said that at the top of the podcast, but hey, we're 20 episodes in. This is really cool. And it's been really fun to see like the numbers over the last week. Over the last 30 days, we've had over 1,000 downloads. I'm like, wow, that's really awesome. Like coming to this, I really didn't have any expectations. I'm more of a video creator, so audio. I'm like, if we get 3 listens, I'm happy. So last episode alone, I think the numbers were 363 downloads for last episode. So it's cool just to see it continue to rise and grow. And we've had reviews continue to come in. So we wanted to read one of them. It was a 5-star review that came in from Apple Podcasts, A. Birchfield. I've followed Andrew's content for a long time, but was thrilled to see this podcast come out of the content engine. Any father who has a true heart for his family wants to do his part to make things the best that they can around the home. This podcast is both practical and profound with advice, but also so deep. Motive checks on what it means to be a dad. We can forget our own identity sometimes in the shuffle of school and lost shoes. And Andrew and Ben do a great job of reminding us that we're still a person of value, and this is simply a season of life. Highly recommend for any dad who wants to make a difference with in their fatherhood. And that's actually really touching to hear. I'm grateful that people feel that way about the podcast, that this can be a source for them to turn to help learn and take comfort in some things throughout their journey into fatherhood. And we're really happy to have Saunders here join us for future episodes as well. It's been really cool to see this thing grow. So thank you all for listening. You guys have any final words before we sign off?
I don't think so.
No.
All right. So, well, thank you guys for listening. And if you want to leave us a 5-star review or just a great comment on YouTube, we'll find it. We'll read it on the next episode. How about that? All right, guys. We hope you have a great one, and we'll catch you in the next one. Episode 21. Peace. All right, guys. I'm in the draft lobby right